Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about the afternoon of Michael Cohen's testimony. It ended with him still on direct, and the prosecution has indicated that they have a little bit more to go. I'll explain where they are in a bit. Then you have to expect that the cross, which starts, let's say, tomorrow mid-morning, probably goes to Thursday, through Thursday. This is their big thing. They're loaded for bear. They've said basically from the opening that this is what they're, going to, their main strategy is going to be, is to totally put Cohen on trial. Now, as I said, Cohen's testimony in the morning was very solid, and almost all of it was corroborated. An interesting point, by the way, that came out in the afternoon. In this case, witnesses from who are going to testify later aren't allowed access to the courtroom or to see transcripts or whatever. And so there was actually an interesting detail involving David Pecker, where David Pecker testified that Michael Cohen had asked him and urged him for some help with his bonus. And they asked Michael Cohen about that, and he said he didn't recall. It brought home to me that they're following the rule against witnesses, which means that all the very impressive congruence is not a matter of any kind of coordination, but just both of them remembering what you might say for that reason is true. Okay, but where we had left it was Kathy McDougal, and Trump directs Cohen to take care of it. They arrive at an amount of money. Remember that AMI already has paid her $150. They arrive at an amount of money for a holding company to pay AMI $125,000 to at least maintain the kind of appearance that some of it is for something other than her life story. In this case, the magazine cover she's doing and some things about a beauty line of products. But a contract is made for $125,000, but Trump just doesn't pay it, and continues not to pay it. And then eventually, Pecker, a little bit oddly, lets him. I mean, Pecker in general, his behavior here, all these things he's really, doing for Trump, in a way that's contrary to his own business interests, except you can conceptualize his business interests as including, sucking up to the possible future president of the United States, as indeed he became. But basically, he eventually tells Cohen, don't worry about the $125,000. One of her covers for the Inquirer or maybe it was for a health magazine, did fantastically well. We made a lot of money on it. Just don't worry about it. And he goes to report to Trump, as he always does. It's a refrain here. He keeps him posted how things are going. Trump says, great. And that's the end of it. Okay. Shortly thereafter, Cohen's in London with his family, and the Access Hollywood tape drops. And now, just in general, starting at about this point, we begin to get details from Michael Cohen, especially of conversations that haven't come out through other witnesses, and that, to me, cohere well. But the jury, in order to credit them, I think will generally have to credit Michael Cohen. I think he gave them very good reason to do so today, but that's the thing to know. We've had a really focused effort by the prosecution to corroborate everything, but there are some important pieces that he alone carries. Okay, so Access Hollywood comes out. An interesting thing we learned is it's on the phone 4, 5, 6 times that day to Hope Hicks, and so they together are trying to spin it. Hope Hicks says deny, but as with respect to Stormy. So on this, Cohen is supposed to sort of handle the press, My recollection is that Trump told him to spin it as locker room talk, and that was an impression that Melania shared. The New York Times has reported that as fact, that came from Melania. I did not think so. I thought Trump was saying, say that this came from Melania. Small, but, material difference. All right. Anyway, there is a general crisis, and that is compounded by 10 when just a few days thereafter the name Stormy Daniels appears. He learns about it from Dylan Howard, one of the AMI one of the mystery witnesses here. Dylan Howard for the jury, Dylan Howard, Alan Weisselberg, Keith Schiller, names that come up, and yet the jury will not hear from. They'll be an interesting question how that'll be taken care of. They'll probably give a so-called missing witness instruction, which just says don't think about it one way or another. And of course, they will anyway. But Stormy Daniels reemerges in the wake of the Access Hollywood tape. So it's a quadruple shitstorm. And Trump's initial reaction is anger at Michael Cohen, saying, I thought that that you had taken care of it. And, but he said, look, she's come forward. What can you do? They did talk a little bit about the initial meeting and the name, well known to Steeler fans everywhere, but also people who are focused on Me Too, situations. Ben Roethlisberger, who had his own difficulties, legal difficulties involving, women. Anyway, he says that that Ben is at the meeting, but Trump is so charismatic that she liked him over Ben. They asked, did you ask him if they'd had sex with him? And he said yes. And that Trump didn't answer, but he did say that Stormy was a beautiful woman. Okay. But now we're in this big, crisis involving Stormy, and what are they going to do? Now, Trump, in a statement that comes up one or two or three times in the case that the jury will have to evaluate, says, just take care of it. Work with David and get control over it. And this is Stormy. And it seems clear enough what he has in mind, but, maybe the defense will try to say that is somehow open-ended. Anyway, he begins. Keith Davidson, who testified before, is representing Stormy, and they have and Trump is the architect of this, deeply dishonest plan. What they're going to try to do is just delay things until after the election, and then it won't matter. Trump tells him, if he loses, no one cares, and if he wins, it goes away. So that's very strong evidence. Again, it's got to be credited because there's no one to substantiate it, but it's very strong evidence that what Trump is worried about is not his family, not Melania, but the election. Indeed, Cohen testifies, this was one of the more memorable lines of the day, about, how will it go with, and he points upstairs or says upstairs, which is where Melania lives when she lives there. It really doesn't even spend very much time there. And Trump says, how long do you think, I don't care, how long do you think I'll be on the market? Which apparently means, maybe I get divorced, but I'll have another young, beautiful wife soon enough. Anyway, so the negotiations ensue with Davidson, except the whole idea is to try to delay. And he does that. They reach a number, but he keeps stringing Davidson along and, not returning calls, and Trump's out of town, and this problem and that problem. And then finally, though, Davidson says, okay, Stormy is, you've breached, we don't see this as an agreement anymore. And by the way, we're going to the Daily Mail, which wants to print this story. She probably wouldn't get any money for it, but, they would print the story. So now, the gig is up. They can't do the delay tactic anymore. And now they really have to get it and fast. And so, they've got a day or two. And that's where this whole feverish thing comes about, Cohen tries to, so Cohen now fills in a lot of the shading of the outline that we had. Why does he wind up doing it from his home equity loan? First, he tries to get David Pecker to pay, and Pecker's like, no way, I'm not a bank, and he didn't pay me back before, forget about it. He has a conversation with Weisselberg. Alan, what about it? You make 7 figures as CFO, and Weisselberg pleads poverty of a sort, having to put his granddaughters through school and the like. And, it's left to Cohen, and loyal guy that he is. He goes through the whole thing that we've heard detailed from his banker in a previous when the banker testified, Russo, and he goes through all these machinations to get money from his home equity. Why from his home equity? Because if he took it from holdings, his wife would know. She'd be really, what the hell are you doing? Just taking $130,000 and giving it to Donald Trump. So that's why he did it with home equity. Did he tell them the truth why he was getting it? No, he lied. He said it was for some kind of real estate activity when in fact, because he concluded that if he said, it was to get an adult film star to enter into an NDA, the bank might not approve it. And indeed, we found out when they testified that the bank wouldn't have approved it. So he lied, and he said he lied, and that was the reason. But that also explained the feverishness of it, the time urgency, and why it's coming from his sort of home equity line of credit. So that really filled in things very well. And then on a few days before the election, he wires the money to Davidson. Davidson had said, we're off. I don't represent her anymore. But once the money was on the table, they were able to push it through. And there you go. That's everything about Stormy in terms of the actual transaction. Now Trump wins the presidency. And that means that Cohen's job is done. He is his actual title is counsel to personal lawyer to Donald Trump. And so he's going to be out. Trump's gone, so there's not going to be a job for him. He does try to think about maybe a job with the administration. The one he wants, he says, is the same job that he has, basically a personal lawyer to the president. He doesn't care about getting money because he'd be able to, in his words, monetize the relationship through other people who would come to him because he was, that person. He was supposedly offered assistant White House counsel. He didn't want it. I've told you about the chief of staff thing where he said he didn't want it, but he wanted to be, because of his ego, considered. Anyway, the musical chairs ends, and while Trump supposedly has said, where is Cohen going to wind up? He's nowhere. And here is the point where loyal Michael Cohen gets the knife plunged in him in a way that changes his whole view toward Trump. Bonuses were given out at Trump Organization around Christmas it sounded a little creepy, Christmas card would kind of go around and tell everybody how much they got. And so we're in 2016. Trump has just won the presidency, and by virtue of this little Christmas card device, Cohen learns one, Trump still hasn't paid him back the $130K, and now two, Trump just gives him a bonus, which is 2/3 less, about 1/3 of what he's been getting in the past. So he is understandably enraged. And he still, as he relates it on the stand, he's again very calm about it, uses the word enraged, but not with the tone. But he says outright he's very upset, and he goes to Weisselberg to talk about it. And he says it doesn't make sense. He's using lots of F-bombs. He hasn't even repaid the $130. And Weisselberg turns out to have the key kind of role here. He says, look, just take it easy. We'll make sure you're taken care of. This will be okay. Cohen had a great quote. I thought it escaped notice for the most part, but he said, I was even for myself unusually angry. So I think it showed his, reputation as being able to call on anger in Trump's service. But so here he feels really screwed. And Weisselberg obviously takes notice of this. Cohen doesn't testify to it, but the missing piece is that Weisselberg lets Trump know how upset Cohen is. Trump calls him once during Christmas vacation, says, "Don't worry, we're going to take care of it when I get back." And it was at that point that he and Weisselberg meet. He has said to Weisselberg, first they meet and produce this most important document in the case, I think, which is, okay, now we're going to take care of things. We're going to take care of everything because, he doesn't have a job anymore. So that's the $130,000 that he paid Stormy. $50,000 he had paid a vendor whom Trump had stiffed for technical things, and he knew the CEO and he felt he had to pay him. But here's some, this is outright larceny, it seems to me. He said it was $50,000, but he hadn't, in fact, paid him $50,000. But he told Weisselberg, "I've paid him $50,000. That's going to come up on cross, obviously. Weisselberg adds those together and then very significantly grosses up in order to make it look like income. That is to say, for legal services, they have to double it because for income is taxed at a 50% rate when you're in New York and you make a lot of money, federal, state, and local all together. So to be made whole with $180,000 of what was really a reimbursement for past services, they put into play a phony arrangement of future payments of twice that amount for the supposedly legally retained services. And then the $60,000 extra, that was less than he'd been stiffed by Trump. For all these details, we've just known the basic skeletal facts, and he's putting, meat on the bones, as it were. The $60,000 is less than he'd been stiffed on his bonus, where he said he'd been stiffed, 2/3. But Alan Weisselberg said, "I think that's all I can do, all I can squeeze Trump for." And it's totally clear, and I think it comes up on questioning, that, of course, this is something Trump's going to have to sign off on. So they do this, and in fact, then the three of them in January 2005 meet with Trump, and Trump gives his blessing, basically, okay, they have a meeting and it matters in January. He gives his okay. And then come February, there's another meeting where just Michael Cohen meets with Trump in the White House. Madeleine Westerhout has previously confirmed that meeting occurred, and Cohen said at that meeting too, Trump said everything's going to be okay, etc. And that's about where we stop for the day. Now, we're now in the individual writings. And that includes the first two checks come from the Trump organization and are signed off on by the trustees. I think it's Eric and Don Jr., but 9 of them, the following 9, are individual checks, personal checks from Trump that he signs in the White House. And there's going to be the defense has less and less room to work with, but their final kind of, they'll take a stand at saying he was signing checks, but he didn't realize that this was false representations, that it was for legal services. There's a problem for Trump. A tweet that came out on Friday showed Trump saying that he was getting, was Cohen, a retainer for legal services, and he had to have known that wasn't true because he wasn't doing any legal services, Cohen, during 2017. But there's going to be a basic fight come closing argument where it's going to be based on circumstantial evidence. Now, you heard, ladies and gentlemen, that Donald Trump never signs a check without examining the paperwork and making sure it's what it says it is, et cetera. And then the defense got a couple of witnesses to say something along the lines of he multitasks, and for less big checks, maybe he does this as he's doing other things. So they'll try to say maybe it's not clear that he knows these are fake documents showing the retainer for services when in fact they're for reimbursement, and that's what made them fake. And that's about where we are. We're going to have interestingly, They've kind of peppered in some of his skeletons that the defense is going to really try to clobber him on, but not all that much. So they've left it for pretty near the end, including his criminal convictions. I think they're just going to tell a chronological story, which it's not clear to me is the best way to go, and it's certainly the sort of least imaginative. But look, they're a solid prosecutorial outfit, and they've decided to do it that way. So hard for me to second guess it, but it does mean that before the cross starts, they're going to hear about a lot of bad stuff about Michael Cohen. And then the other thing is they'll go through the papers and, the individual 34 documents. And that, again, the proof will be the most circumstantial and the least corroborated. So in summary, today, a very solid job, especially in the morning, of going through everything. Then in the afternoon, more solid job, very good testimonial qualities of listening, responding, but being fairly natural, an occasional light moment of humor here or there, and filling in on these important conversations in a way that, only Cohen will provide, since Weisselberg won't testify. Quick aside there is the judge decided that the jury cannot see the separation agreement with Weisselberg, so they'll just have to wonder why he's not there. But anyway, the fills in things. It's only Cohen's word, but they're cogent. They hold up in the overall story, and especially against the very strong picture we've gotten of Trump as being both micromanagerial and obsessed with money, small and large. So I'd say a very good day for the prosecution. Tomorrow will be nearly a full day of cross, and I think going into Thursday as well. There may be another witness having to do with federal election law, or we'll see. They've said they'll have one other after this, but they've obviously decided, contrary to what most people, including I, expected, to bring him on at the end and have him do his star turn and hope that the jury will believe him. And based on the evidence of just today, it seems like a good bet. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.